Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us on the program. And today is a very special day, Martin Luther King Day, celebrating the life of a man who wanted freedom for all people. He had a dream. I remember as a little boy listening to him and being taken back by his speech. I have a dream. And he had that dream for all people. And so today we have a very special show that has to do with his dream and the dream of many people in the United States of America. An engineer, if you could, if you put the photos of our guest up on the screen, I want to introduce to our viewers our special guest for today, Mr. Art Jones. And there you see him looking dapper in that white hat there. He's director of Dream Factory USA, and he has an in-depth experience with television, educational documentary film productions, and all kinds of audio-visual arts. Beginning in 1974 as a production assistant on the groundbreaking educational cartoon production Multiplication Rock, which later spawned the hit ABC network series Schoolhouse Rock. Art has carved a long list of production credits and a wide range of engaging productions. Coming on the heels of producing Models of Success in 2006, the documentary film that covered the road to success for three dynamic and delightful Arab women in the Gulf region. Subsequently, he was asked by the president of Aliyah University to build the first ever media production center of any private university in the country of Bahrain. This new 21st century high-definition media facility was designed to usher in a new age of broadcast journalism, film, and television production, aimed at training Arab youth with contemporary methods of information gathering and presentation, and thus enable them to effectively tell stories about their lives and their world. Closest to his heart is the docudrama Spirit, The Will to Be Free. This heavily researched film production follows the course of events on the Caribbean island of Saint Dominique, that to igniting the night of fire, and traces the circuitous course of dramatic events that led to the first successful slave revolt in the Western Hemisphere and establishing the independent Republic of Haiti. His latest creation is the film titled Ali's Comeback, which features the life of Muhammad Ali. An engineer, if you can put him up on the screen, I would like to bid a warm welcome to director and my friend Art. So if you can bring him up on the screen, there we go. Welcome to A Time for Truth, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And you know, let's get right to it because you have so much to share. I wanted to ask you a question. What stimulated you to be a television and film producer?
see myself as an educator for the most part, and realizing that I came out of an era where there was a proliferation of tremendous amount of engaging audio-visual material, and that is to say in the early to mid-1970s, and seeing the impact of my very first TV project while I was at Bank Street College of Education for grad school, and its impact that it had on my son, who was then 4 years old, who was dancing around the IRT train station on 112th Street in Broadway. I was awed to see his ability to just retain much of what was in the cartoon series, and then opening my eyes to recognizing just how powerful this medium known as television was and could still be, depending upon what content you put into it. And so going from being a classroom teacher, which I was at that time, I began to recognize that I could reach a much more engaged audience by being able to harness the audiovisual medium and utilizing my knowledge of pedagogy and education to create engaging productions that were thought-provoking, that were inspirational, and also, along the way, educational.
Very nice. And you know what I wanted to ask you is what drives you on your films? You know, you always hear that we each have our own purpose, our own fire, the things that stimulate us, that move us on, that push us forward. What is it that drives you in your film productions?
When it comes to narration, it's normally the script, and everything is predicated upon the script that I design. And what creates the script is my being stimulated or motivated by something that I've seen, that I thought was thought-provoking, that I thought was important, that I thought was most likely unknown or unheard of by a larger audience. And for case in point, my production when I was in Bahrain of entitled Models of Success, which was about 3 women from the Arab world who began with nothing more than just an idea and very little money, but they had these huge visions for what they would like to do. And with persistence and tenacity, they were able to navigate a way to establish a meaningful place within a male-dominated culture and become a means of inspiration for hundreds of thousands of other young Arab women to lay down the red carpet, if you will, or guide them by showing that there are those who have ideas that are female that have been able to achieve monumental things in their lives, and that was the major thrust behind that film, was to be able to have something that really counterbalanced much of what Westerners, people in England and in the United States and parts of Europe felt about Arab women as a result of America's illegal and unnecessary invasion of a foreign nation that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11.
Very interesting. And you know, you have a new film coming out called Ali's Comeback. Tell us about this film.
Ali's Comeback tells the story of how the greatest athlete of the 20th century was able to return from the shadows of the boxing world and back onto the world stage after not being able to fight for over 3.5 years in the city of Atlanta, Georgia, in 1970.
Very nice. Engineer, you know, we have his video, and I was wondering if you could go ahead and let's put the video up on the screen for our viewers to watch, a little trailer of Ali's Comeback. Let me know when you have that ready.
I'm ready.
Good, go ahead, let's play it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Down on my knees, but I keep my head to the sky, knowing that the power I need, only God can provide.
My intention is to box to win a clean fight. But in war, the intention is to kill, 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 and continue killing innocent people.
It's been 3.5 years since he's been stripped of his title.
He was 27. His title had been stripped from him back in 1967, and he was just looking to fight.
Convicted for draft evasion, threatened with imprisonment, Muhammad Ali is banned from fighting in all 50 states. But in Atlanta, Georgia, in October of 1970, that all changed. Matched against the top contender for the boxing crown, Jerry Quarry, the greatest, is back.
I just knew it would happen, eventually. I just was hoping it would happen before they come grab him to put him in jail.
The build-up to the fight was one of just exceptional enthusiasm.
Reading the papers was exciting because you heard somebody's view on this is going to happen, Quarry's going to win because, and then somebody else says no, Ali's going to win because.
The night of the match was electrifying.
It was, as one observer called it, the largest display of black wealth in history in a single location up until that point.
A major event took place in our city. I, as mayor, knew that it was significant, that this was very meaningful to our city in many ways.
And what were their challenges? The significance of the fight and the incredible after-party that never happened. Ali's comeback.
Very interesting, Art.
That's a nice trailer. I kind of like that.
Do you know who made that film?
It almost makes you want to go see the film all over again. I've seen it at least 2,000 times, but just watching the trailer, because I haven't seen it in a while, and I'm thinking, wow, that's an exciting film. I want to see that.
Well, you know what? That's a very important story, because there you have him protesting man killing man. And very interesting message that he had. Here you had this champion of the world in a violent sport who actually had the intelligence and the foresight to see that man killing man didn't lead to anything positive.
Well, as he said, and as you heard in the trailer, yeah, his position as a boxer was to fight in order to dominate his opponent, but not to kill him. That was his entire approach. Also, Ali took boxing to a level that very few boxers can make the claim that it became an art. It was not just a sport anymore. He took boxing to a level where if you saw him in the ring, and I'm sure you have, he was poetry in motion. It was hard to believe that he was only a boxer, because with his footwork and with his quickness, Ali was able to elevate boxing to an art status, which is something no boxer, even Joe Louis before his time, was able to achieve. So when you look at Ali's approach to boxing, his approach was really, I want to dominate my opponent, I want to win the fight, I do not want to inflict any permanent damage on my opponent. And except for Ernie Terrell. And I say that only because Ernie Terrell was one of he along with Floyd Patterson were two American boxers who during that time refused to honor him as Muhammad Ali. And both Floyd Patterson and Ernie Terrell lived long enough to pay the painful price of not addressing him as Muhammad Ali. But everybody else, I believe Ali simply wanted to best his opponent so he could win the fight, win the prize money, and go home.
It was really, when you look at him, like you said, he dominated, and he actually also fought and won some fights that no one in the world ever thought he was going to win, against Ernie Shavers, against George Foreman, Ron Lyle.
Even further back, no one thought he was going to beat Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston was a bear. He was huge. He was magnanimous. I mean, he was knocked out in the first round. Ali was 22 years old and barely a heavyweight. He was a light heavyweight, and there in 1960 at the Rome Olympics, he had just gotten into the boxing world after the Rome Olympics, and by 1964 he wasn't as powerful as he later became. So he was still growing, and he's taking on the world heavyweight champion who is knocking guys out in the first round. The odds against Ali winning was 8-1. Nobody thought Ali was going to win that fight. They just thought he was a loudmouth, and they thought that he was going to get his mouth shut by Sonny Liston, and that the Louisville Lip was finally going to meet its match, and that's it. Was going to dominate, or no one's going to, like Ali is going to best somebody like Sonny Liston. And Ali, as he said, he upset the world.
It's very interesting, because it's a message that we can get from these victories that he had, is that despite all odds, he continued and he went forward and he followed his plan. He didn't try to kill the other person. He didn't try to put vengeance on them. He just wanted to get his point across. He got his point across. He got it, attention paid to it. And to me, I really would love to see this film. I can't wait to see it. And I'm glad to have you on the show. So I wanted to ask you, Art, what message is it that you feel needs to come out of this movie? What is the message that you would like to see promulgated out into society?
Well, the film actually has several key messages within it, but I would say initially, my journey was initiated at the time of Ali's demise on June 3rd, 2016. I literally was working in the studio doing some editing a small production when it came over NPR that he had passed, and I froze, and I spent that weekend just rereading some of the books that I have on Ali, and read Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper. Just started my subscription to it, and I was reading article after article about Ali's relationship with the city of Atlanta, and I had this epiphany on that Sunday. I'm in the city that gave rebirth the career of the greatest athlete of the 20th century. I asked myself, given the controversy surrounding Ali at that time, how was that possible? That's what started me on the journey with by collecting them and finding out if there had already been a filmmaker who had done a film on this topic, because there are plethora about the Muhammad Ali. I thought if somebody may have done this, I did not want to reinvent the wheel, so I thought, let's spend about a week to research, to look at a bunch of films about Ali or with Ali in them, and see if this issue, or this time, not issue, but this time period, or his return to the ring in 1970 is addressed. Well, lo and behold, after a week of viewing of numerous films, we came back, me and the 4 members of my team, and we recognized that no one has really done a substantial production that addressed the seminal moment in the life of the great Muhammad Ali. That's what launched us into what later became a 5-year journey to put this film together, where we started with people such as Zenona Clayton, who was the first African-American female to have a TV show, daytime TV show here in the city of Atlanta. We reached out to Ambassador Andrew Young, who was physically at the fight and was involved with several other civil rights activists to ensure that the fight took place in the city of Atlanta, where Senator Leroy Johnson, who was the very first senator in the state of Georgia in 92 years, or should I say since Reconstruction. And he was also the person who made it possible for Ali to get a license. But before that happened, there was this Jewish kid from Brooklyn, New York, who came down to Atlanta, Georgia, who went to university, law school, graduated, met a Southern belle, married her, moved back to Brooklyn, New York, was working on Park Avenue when Bob Arum, the great boxing promoter, reaches out to him and says, "Hey kiddo, how would you like to be a boxing promoter?" And he, who maybe is 29, 30 years old at the time, decides, "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do it." And Bob Arum says, "Okay, here is Muhammad Ali's contract." "Oh, thank you, I got Muhammad Ali's contract." But it was a cruel trick, because he gave him Ali's contract at a time which Ali was stripped of his title. He was convicted of draft evasion. He had a $10,000 fine, 5 years imprisonment, and the United States government revoked his passport, so he could not travel outside the country. So he basically gave him the contract for a lame duck. Okay? But because he has his youthful exuberance, and he's got Ali's contract, he goes to 4 different locations to get Ali back into the ring. Miami, New Orleans, Michigan, and North Carolina. All of those attempts implode, because as they get to the point between him and the other people within the boxing world, they would always get a phone call from Washington, D.C., and it was always somebody from the federal government. I'm not going to say which particular arm of the federal government, but by the time they got off the phone, the fight could not go on. There was such strong motion in this nation against ever letting Ali fight again. And let me explain to you why. Ali was the very first to say, after he won the heavyweight title, "I am my own man. I'm not your Negro." Let me say that again. "I am not your Negro." Okay? And more importantly, he said, "I don't have any quarrel with the Vietnamese. They never did anything for me. They never prevented me from being able to go to the kind of school that I went to go, the kind of restaurant that I wanted to eat into, or to live in the kind of community that I wanted to, or to have the kind of employment that myself and other people that look like me might otherwise be qualified to have, but are denied." So Ali felt that he did not have any reason to put on a uniform to go 10,000 miles away to fight in a war that was created by white capitalist Americans. It's your war, you fight it, leave us out of it, because time after time again, we have a long history of coming to the table to fight your battles, or fight battles that you start under the auspices or the promise that life is going to be better for us when we get back home, only to find out that absolutely no change for us socially, economically, or politically. So getting back to the track with regard to where we are with Robert Castle. Robert Castle is back in New York City after four implosions. 4 times he tried to get Ali into the ring. 4 times it fails. Woe is me, I can't get Ali into the ring. Out of frustration, he calls his father. His father's name is Harry. His father-in-law, let me be clear. His name is Harry Pett. He lives in Atlanta. And he says, "Who do you know that could possibly tell me what the law concerning boxing is in the state of Georgia?" Harry Pett says, "I don't know anybody because I'm not a lawyer, but I do know a black senator who might be able to help you out." He calls Leroy Johnson, or Senator Leroy Johnson, and he prevails upon him to see if he could find out what the statute is in Georgia relating to boxing. Leroy Johnson's not a real great boxing enthusiast, but he respects Ali. And he makes the effort to find out what is the law in the state of Georgia in 1970 concerning boxing. Within 24 hours, he calls him up and very confidently says, "I can get Ali a license." And the reason he could speak so confidently and so boldly is because in 1970, in the state of Georgia, there was no boxing law. Nothing exists in the state of Georgia regarding boxing. That was the opening that allowed Ali to begin the process to return to the ring in October 26th of 1970. See, now I told you, so you don't even have to see the movie.
Amazing story. It shows you the will is stronger than the obstacles, and that it's amazing that they continued, which reminds me of a saying that there's no such thing as a failure It's only a lack of continuing on far enough until you actually achieve your goal. And Ali, and your story that you just told is so true about that. I want to ask you something for our viewers, because there's a lot of people.
Before you get to that, I just want to be clear in terms of actually answering your question. Within the context of this film, what we discovered, and I think it's important for viewers to take away from Ali's comeback, is one, there was a disparate group of people who came from different backgrounds. You had Jews, you had Christians who came together, who were black and white, and they made it possible for a Muslim to have a career once again. So you have some people who came together for something that was much more spiritually significant to them than any kind of petty differences that they might have had. So those things were not part of the equation. Two, you have individuals that became, not so much the individuals, as I want to say, these individuals coming together in the way that they did was nothing less than a cosmic alignment. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. For someone like myself, who is not necessarily religiously, I cannot deny that there had to be some greater power, some greater force at play to make this fight happen. Why? Robbie Castle is this young neophyte who's never promoted a fight in his entire life. The first fight he's get to promote is that with Muhammad Ali. He has got a struggle to even get him into the ring, to even possibly get a license for him. His father-in-law just happened to have known Leroy Johnson. Leroy Johnson just happened to have found out that in 1970 there's no boxing law in the state of Georgia. He gets the license. Robert Castle now comes down with a letter of credit for $600,000 to pay for the fight. But that's when things just begin. Now you have Ali has a license to fight against Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier is managed by Yank Durham. There's been over 50 attempts to get Ali into the ring in the course of these 3.5 years. All of them went nowhere. Okay, so what happens is Leroy Johnson, once he gets the license and Robert Castle commits to paying for the fight, he flies up to Philadelphia to speak to Yank Durham, who is the manager and trainer for Joe Frazier. Now, this is not the first time someone has tried to coordinate and set up a fight between Ali and Frazier, but they had done it so many times when it went nowhere that Yank Durham tells Leroy Johnson, thank you, but no thanks, because we don't want to go through another kind of, remember the story with the young shepherd who was taking care of the sheep, and he kept crying wolf, 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 and there was no wolf? That's how Yank Durham felt about Ali and Frazier ever fighting. The fight would be planned, everything would come together, everybody would be ready to sign, then they get a phone call from the federal government, and then everything would fall apart. So Yank Durham was like, I don't think so. So he comes back to Atlanta. The first time Ali's got a chance to fight in 3.5 years, his opponent doesn't want to fight him, or his manager will not let him fight him. There are 10 top contenders in 1970. Of the 10 top contenders, 9 of them will not fight Ali. They don't want to run the risk of going into the ring with somebody who's so politically polarizing. So what do they do?
You know what? The problem is that we've run out of time, but I think your point is well taken, because I think the viewers are all with you that in spite of all of this, it still came to be true, and it shows exactly what you said, that there was this cosmic confluence, there was a brotherhood of humanity. It wasn't different races, it wasn't different religions, it wasn't different creeds. We had people helping people with a spiritual goal in mind. So you know what, unfortunately, we've reached the end of the show, but I really love it.
I'm just getting warmed up. I was just getting ready to get onto it. Okay, that's right. That's right.
I see that.
That's
so
correct.
In honor of Martin Luther King Day and his dream, in honor of Muhammad Ali and standing up for mankind, may we all learn a lesson to carry forward, follow our dreams. Thank you, Art, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.
Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. It was our pleasure.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet